So we're going to talk about, we're going to try to build a semi-intelligent Slack bot, and it's kind of fun. This is not what I do at work, but I enjoy it. So the big question is why would we build something like this? It would be really amazing to be able to talk to the machine and do things like, I know nothing about art, help. And it will tell me, if you don't understand conceptual art, it's not your fault, and give me a link. Or maybe, can artists help Detroit? Whoa, that's pretty cool. Or what are the most important artists of 2015? And it will find that information for me, top living artists of 2015. So that's pretty awesome. Round of applause. Okay, so, all right, so, is this actually artificial intelligence as you read in a lot of newspapers? Probably not. It's faking it a little bit. It's not going to be an intelligent bot in 15 minutes. But I'll go back, and I want to explain kind of the basics for you to get started about writing a Slack bot. And we're going to do it in Ruby. And since I'm live coding, it will not work. So correct my mistakes as you see them. I'll go very briefly over the integration overview that Slack provides, and Slack has a bunch of APIs, notably web, real-time, and platform services, and I'll explain what all those things are very quickly and show them to the extent that we have time, and you'll come out of this pretty much able and to begin to write a Slack bot. So, all right, so Slack is a company that built themselves kind of ground up from very early attempts at integration, third-party integrations, and all the way to a full platform. So what they have is about 5 different ways to interact with Slack. And just to be sure, how many of you use Slack on a daily basis here? Okay, it's all the hands are up. So that's pretty much what I expected. All right, so there are things like incoming and outgoing webhooks, which are just ways to send but not receive messages to Slack, or a way to receive messages to Slack but not send them. So kind of like very specific integrations. You've probably used slash commands. Giphy is probably the most known. You do slash Giphy, and it gives you an animated GIF on the keyword that you gave it. So slash commands is a way to add other slash commands, not just Giphy, but something else. Giphy is an integration by itself. Slack has a full web API that lets you send messages to the Slack website, and then something happens inside Slack. So it's more like software initiated, like send a message. And the real-time API, which is 24/7 back and forth. So this time you can not only send messages, you can also receive messages and basically read and listen to what's going on. And finally, they put this whole thing together in something called the Slack platform, and they added the Slack button, and that allows third parties to use your bot. So basically, somebody comes to your website, clicks on a button, and then they have your bot in their Slack channels. So it kind of goes from bottom to top. So this platform the idea is that people will write tons of bots. They will be super smart, and everybody will make tons of money on the Slack platform. It should be reminiscent of Facebook platform and everybody else's platform. However, everybody uses Slack. All right, so once you have an app, it will be published to the Slack app directory, and all the money will be made. All right, so let's try and write something. Let's try to write something simple. Actually, I'm not going to show you the incoming and outgoing webhooks, so slash commands. I'll start with the Slack web API, which is actually how I started building integrations with Slack. It's kind of in the middle of the options of that integration. So to start with, let me just cancel this. I have a little editor. Let's do, I might not actually type this up because I have this already pre-typed. It will be faster. All right, so Slack exposes, everybody can read this? Make this bigger. Slack exposes a endpoint, so it's just a URL, and you can post something to that URL. So let's run this simple test. So it's like Ruby test RB. I'll make this bigger too. Okay, and you saw that it replied, this is the reply that came back, it said, okay, true. So now I'm just talking to the API, it returned some JSON back that said, okay, true. That's just API test, I have an internet connection, that's nothing else. So it's obviously not useful to do something without authentication, because the whole point is to talk to a particular Slack team, so it wants to identify you. So I'll comment this out. So what we're going to do is we'll call another endpoint. It's auth test, which is a way to check if your credentials are valid. Obviously, I don't have any, so this should fail. Yeah. So the first one, you can see, said, okay, false, error, not auth. I didn't save this, that's why this did the other one. So here's the response in JSON that said, you've got an error, it's not auth, Slack is talking to me, it now knows that I'm nobody. So I'm going to send a token in this as a parameter to this, and I have it in an environment variable. So how do you get one of those? You go to the Slack UI, you create a new bot integration, and it gives you a token back. So now you're a thing in Slack's directory, and using that token, you can go and call something like auth test. And there it is, and it will come back with a JSON that tells you that you are actually, this is the team you are part of, this is the user that you are, this is my art bot, and then 2 IDs. These are interesting. Team IDs start with a T, user IDs start with a U, channel IDs start with a C. That's just making sure everybody is following. Okay, so now I'm authenticated. I've got a way to talk to Slack. I can try and send a message to Slack. So let's send something very simple. I'll comment this out. Go ahead there. Okay, so how does this work? It's an HTTP post to Slack API chat post message. So what is this chat post message? It's an API that Slack provides. Slack has a web page that documents all the methods of the web API, and one of them is this chat post message. What are the parameters that I'm sending to it? The token for authentication, the channel to which I want to post, this #general channel, and the text is hello world. Make sense? What do you think is going to happen? Anybody?
Say hello.
Yeah, it's going to say hello world in one of my Slack channels. Here, general, hello world. That came from my bot. Pretty cool. I just sent a message to Slack. That was straightforward. Now, this is kind of like this anonymous message. You can see it said bot, some bot sent me this message. I can also pretend like I'm the user that registered the bot, and that's as user true. And let's send it again. And you can see it's my art bot with my icon now is pretending like it's an actual user. So this bot can actually act as any other user on your Slack team. So it can send things as long as you want. It returns some interesting data, such as the ID of the channel to which it sent it, a timestamp, this is the ID of the message, and so on and so forth. This actually lets you edit messages. So there are bots that go and like edit messages in line, try to add things to them and things like that. You can do a lot of interesting things with the web API. So that's all good. However, what we want is a little bit more complicated. So what we'd like is to be able to live in a Slack channel and listen to the incoming messages. So this time I don't want to just send something to Slack, I want to also listen to what's going on Slack. And so to start that kind of real-time communication, the first thing that I need is an address, a WebSocket address. That is something that's going to be maintained between my bot and Slack forever. So as long as my bot runs, we're going to establish a connection, and on that connection we're going to send messages back and forth. In fact, every time something happens in Slack, I'll get a message. Every time I want to send something, I'm going to send something back. So we'll actually start a real chat. So the API for that is also a web API. You start by saying RTM start, which is real-time start. And I want to show you what it returns. One of the things it returns is a URL. So let's just do that. There you go. So I got back a nice URL here very long with a bunch of stuff attached to it, and that URL is a WebSocket secure URL under SSL. So this is the address that I can connect to, and then I establish a connection over WebSockets. That's how most of these chatty things work. All right, so let's establish a connection. Let's try to do something useful. For one, we're going to use a library called Event Machine. So one of the interesting things with this kind of chat application is that a lot of stuff is going to happen at the same time. There'll be messages typed in hundreds of channels. There'll be things I'm going to have to send back. So all this has to happen pretty much simultaneously. So all of this involves some kind of concurrency, kind of like a web server. I'm going to get incoming messages. I'm going to have to respond to them while I'm reading some other messages at the same time. So a lot of this is boilerplate for Ruby concurrent programming. Ruby doesn't really do threads as much as it does concurrent execution and things that are activated by messages sent from the outside. So we use a library called Event Machine and something called Fay WebSocket. So we're going to create a new WebSocket connection, and when that connects with that URL, so that's just a wrapper on top of that URL, once that WebSocket connection is open, we're just going to log. This P is just print, so print out that we open the connection. And then every time we're going to get a message, for now we'll just display on our console the message that we're getting. And then finally, when it's closed, we're going to close everything and get rid of it. So this is pretty straightforward. All I did is create a client, do something when the connection starts, do something every time a message is received, and do something when the connection is closed to clean up. Okay? So far, so good. So let's run this. This is... Okay, and you can see now my bot is running and waiting for things to happen, right? So it's a 24/7 process, and you can see the messages that I got. I got a message that said type hello, and now there's some reconnect URL and presence change. And what this is actually my bot that just became online on Slack, and I get back a notification from Slack saying your user is now online. So if you look, my Ruby bot here, my art bot here is actually online. It went to green, right? And I can start and type something to the bot, like hello, and notice as soon as I pressed H, I got a message, user typing. So I'm a different user, and I already am getting a message that someone is typing. So anytime a user types in a channel where this bot is invited, you're going to get a message. So we can make a channel, for example. FirstMark. And I got a message that the channel was created on the bot. And I can invite my art bot. And I got another message that said that the art bot was invited to a channel. And as I start typing, I'm getting messages like that. And I can send hi to the bot, and it receives this text hi on this team, and so on and so forth. So you can see what's happening. Every time something's happening on Slack, for the hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of users, we get bombarded with notification messages on my bot that something is happening, and I can react to that. So let's try to react to that, and we'll do something pretty hacky. We'll just look at the data that's sent to us, and whenever the data is of type message, which is something documented by the Slack API, and the text that is sent with the data is hi, pretty straightforward, I'm going to send back to the socket a message with the text hi and give back the username. This is a little bit Slack specific. The user that asked me, that sent me the message, is in this data user field, and then if I add an @ in front of it, that references the user, so it becomes like a link, right? There's some special syntax that Slack provides. So let's go run this. And I can go to my bot. So you can DM bots, or you can do this in a channel. So I'll just do, if I do foobar, nothing happens, but if I do hi, it's going to say back hi deblock to me. Pretty cool, right? So now we are talking back and forth. Very impressive. Now, you don't have to write this whole boilerplate. There are libraries for this. There are libraries to do the web API stuff, and there are libraries to do the real-time API stuff. So here's a bot that is written with a library. So remove the whole platform support, all the special knowledge, all that stuff. You can use a high-level API, so you can get started much much easier. So here's a bot that uses something called Slack Ruby bot, and it responds to a command hi and can send back a message with the same thing on that channel. So we can run this one. And it will run, and the bot will run. There it is. Okay. And then I can say hi, and it will say hi back to me. Same thing, right? Just in a lot less code. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time or use low-level libraries. So there's a bunch of Ruby libraries and Node.js libraries and every other library possible and imaginable to interact with Slack, where you don't have to write all this lower-level boilerplate. You can go and do a high-level thing. Okay, now, this is great. This is a bot that I start on a console by myself. How about we turn it into a service that other people can install? So the way we do it is that we write a bot kind of the same way as we did before, except we need to also be a web server that responds to registration. So what happens is Slack implemented auth. It's an authentication workflow. Somebody comes to your website, clicks a button that sends to Slack. Slack says, is it okay that I install this bot with your team? You say, okay, because you're a team admin. That redirects back, and now the bot provider knows that somebody is trying to install it with the team. And when that happens, it will simply start a new bot server. So this is this line of code. I'm using a library to do this. So I'll show you what this looks like when we run it. This is 07 service with a bot. All this code is on GitHub, by the way. Okay, so I have a web server that's running, and I'm going to open a web page. This is just a plain web page that has a one add to Slack button, and I want to show you what it looks like. So this Slack button is a link to a well-known Slack URL, authorize. It says, I want to register a bot. The kind of bot I want to register is this client ID. You go to the Slack UI, you create an application, it gives you a client ID and a client secret, and that's it. The rest is just images. Okay, so it's just like a link to Slack, masqueraded as a button. So if I press this, it's going to say, test app would like to access your Slack team. Choose which team I want to access. It says authorize or don't authorize. And there you go, team successfully registered. And so now, I have a test bot somewhere, should be. Okay, oh yeah, I installed it in my play team. So look, I have Artbot here now. No, I don't. Where's my bot? I told you it won't work. Present change. What team did I install this in? I have too many teams. Okay, I don't know, I put it somewhere. But trust me, it works. And so, so you register the bot, and then that's the same result. Basically, the bot is active, and it's running, and next time, what you do is you save the information that Slack sent you, which is the token that I used to hard code before. And then next time you restart the service, you just have to reconnect back using those tokens. So there's this workflow that lets other people install the bot. And we don't have to go too much in detail. Now, you wanted the semi-intelligent bot, the one I demoed before. I'm out of time, so I don't have time to write it. However, I'll show you the code. It is really not that smart. I know that sounded smart, but a lot of the bots that you see just look smart. So this is the code from my very smart bot. It just matches any kind of text that goes on and does a Google search on with the key and the context, which is the Artsy's website context. So all you got is responses from Google to whatever I typed. So if you can't make a very smart bot very quickly, you can just fake it by using somebody's third-party service. And it seems very impressive and very cool. So that's like a 5 lines of code bot. Good? Easy? All right, so Google is always there for you. All right. I want to, this is not very impressive as far as AI is concerned. Sorry about that. The question that I get a lot about what to write and what kind of bot do you want to write? And so my answer is, what you want to write is something that people already do. So find in your office or in your team or out there things that people do anyway, and then bring them to Slack as a command line interface that could become very useful. So some examples. I wrote a ping pong leaderboard called playplay.io. You can go and install it on your Slack channel. So playplay.io gives you a leaderboard for ping pong. You challenge someone, they accept, you lose, and then you say ping pong lost, and it's records a point for your opponent. So it's a way to reserve the ping pong table, it's a way to keep leaderboard, who's on top of the leaderboard, and there's cool animated GIFs. So that's quite popular. There's many hundreds of teams using it. I tried something else. I wrote a market bot. It's market.playplay.io, and that's basically stock quotes coming from Yahoo. The nice part about the bot is that it can get the quotes from within a conversation. So you type, what do you think of MSFT, and it says, MSFT is going to tank next week, replies somebody, but at the same time you get the chart for MSFT and you didn't have to do anything for it. So it's not like /command enabled or anything like that. It just listens to all the conversations that are being had in the channel. I wrote another one that I think is really cool with a friend. I'll show you what it is, and you can go and install it, and I hope you do. The website is missingkidsbot.org, and it gives you Amber Alerts in your Slack channels for missing children using data from missingkids.org. So it's obviously free and great for everybody, so please go and install this bot. All right, and I wrote some other ones for the nerds here. I wrote one that's a shell called Schlack, and that was not accepted in the Slack App Store, unfortunately. It's basically a Unix shell inside Slack. It has rudimentary VI. You could have full file system and other unnecessary things. So you can install that and make it super impressive. All right, that's all I have for you. The code for this is on GitHub, semi-intelligent Slack bot in Ruby, and you can look through the code, use it, and so on and so forth. And feel free to contact me for any questions that you might have, whether it's about Slack bots, about the very serious business of fine art, or play leaderboards for ping pong. Thank you.
All right, Q&A time. So first question, what is Artsy?
Oh yeah, sure. So I was trying not to talk too much about work, but Artsy is Artsy's online platform for fine art. We work with galleries, institutions, museums, collectors. Basically do everything that you can imagine in the art world from every side of the fine arts business and not business. It's the largest database of contemporary art today, and it was born as the Art Genome Project. So it's a way to discover and learn about art, kind of a little bit like Pandora for art. It's a 6-year-old startup, about 150 people, post-Series C, and doing very, very well. We are on every continent, do a lot of art fairs and things like that.
Great.
Yeah, Artsy is one of New York's probably most relevant success stories as a business that is very much a technology-enabled business and something that is very traditionally not technology-enabled.
That's great. I wanted to give you a chance for that.
Sure, thank you.
So questions?
So two-part question. So if you're writing a bot and hosting it as a service, you have to establish an independent connection for each team, or is there you process everything in a central location and then you have to filter?
Yeah. So the question is whether you have to establish a connection per team. And the answer is yes. You have to establish a connection per team. There are different frameworks that deal with it differently. It's typically a single server can easily handle many thousands of these connections, but might be a little slow to start. So there's various degrees of sophistication of how you distribute that across machines and so on and so forth. But the listener part, the thing that actually listens to events on Slack, It's very much a single WebSocket connection responding to events. There are some businesses that are using building libraries where they write it to Redis and then read it from multiple workers and stuff like that. So you can scale this horizontally.
And the second part, so if you have a bot that's listening on the channel, and presumably like another bot that's also talking on that channel, like is there a way for your bot to say, don't engage in conversation with that bot?
Oh yes, when bots start engaging in conversation, what happens? There are, so yes and no, you can do things. Yes, you can make two bots talk to each other. It's fun. I've done it before accidentally by having two instances of my same bot saying, help, 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 help. So it's not, what happens, Slack will eventually notice that bots are sending a lot of messages really fast and cut them off and start erroring out the connection. So it kind of has protections against that. But if not, you can recognize a bot message with a flag. And that's the only difference between a message sent from a bot, it says is bot or something like that, versus a human. There's actually not many differences between most humans and bots, so I think it works fine.
What are some of the best bots you've seen in practice? What I mean by best here is that actually
useful.
Improve. Yes, useful.
Yes, none of the ones I wrote.
No offense.
I think we use a few bots. One that we use is for status or stand-up. So we have teams that do stand-ups that are very remote, and they do a stand-up on Slack now at least once or twice a week, and the bot just at 9 a.m. every day says, what's your status? And then once everybody has given the status, we'll provide we'll give the status of everybody together so everybody can kind of see what's going on. So I think that's quite useful. A lot of Slack integrations are very valuable. Whenever you paste a link from Trello, it will expand and describe what that is. It's called unfurling of URLs. It describes what's inside of the website. So a lot of things like that I think are really good. I think of the bots that we use every day, the stand-up ones are probably the most common. You should look in the app directory on Slack. There's literally hundreds of bots now. People have been writing them like crazy. It's a gold rush for bots.
What's the approval process like, and as a user, do you generally trust bots that you don't see the code for?
Do I trust bots I don't see code for? No. So one thing that's interesting, the bot gets all your messages. So I run a market bot, and then I also run a ping pong leaderboard bot. So I look at the ping pong leaderboard bot to see which financial companies are playing a lot of ping pong, and then sell their stock or short it. So. I think more seriously, there's a lot of information that bots receive, and so I would not invite a bot in a channel which is, I would not invite a ping pong bot in a channel which is about serious work, just to avoid the bot seeing those messages. I think that, as always with software, if it's a serious business, they probably have good code and deal with it correctly. Otherwise, it's one of those not so well-known areas yet. So no, I wouldn't trust bots as much. You always have to beware inviting them to channels.
And probably time for one more.
Have you used it for any SPLC type stuff, or magic bases like bills and reviews to handle that stuff?
Yeah, we just hook it up. So have we used it for, and I haven't answered your second question, which I will in a second. Have we used it for code reviews and things like that? So we hook it up to GitHub, and we get notifications from those things. Our CI process is mostly automated via things like Travis or CircleCI or others. So we rarely kick off things from Slack, but I see a lot of teams who started using Slack as their command line interface to start Amazon instances and things like that. So I can totally see that work. I don't see why not. We generally have for a given engineering team, we'll have a couple of channels. For example, for our auctions team, we have an auctions developer channel where developers talk about developer stuff. We have an auctions machines channel where notifications come. So for example, any project related to auctions, whenever there is a build or something got merged, it will go there. And then we have another one that's called Auction Ops, where we get notifications about, let's say, a new bid has come in on a particular lot for an auction that we're doing. So that's how we try to separate channels for things that are generated by machine, generated by humans, and we don't use it as much as command line interface for operations type stuff, but it's interesting. There was a question I forgot to answer, sorry about that, about what the approval process from Slack is. Slack is a very friendly company. You have to imagine that they're getting a ton of solicitation and people trying to put bots, make bots, ask questions, so it's pretty overwhelming. So they're a little slow, but the process is well documented. You fill in a form, it tells you what you're supposed to do, and there's a very friendly person, Amy, who will tell you that you need to add a help page, you need to add a particular thing, we'll give suggestions, terms of use, and stuff like that. So it's now a relatively well-oiled process, it's just the round trips sometimes are a little slow. And you can Google, there's a few people that wrote the details of what they had to do to get into that process. We're getting the Missing Kids bot right now into the Slack directory, and by now I know that we need a clear terms of use, we need a help page, we need a clear contact info, but all that is in the instructions.
Awesome. Daniel, thank you very much.
Thank you.